Hello to all my booty seekers and cheek chasers. This is the Carpe Natem Podcast. I'm your host, Nate De La Hoya-Reynoso, and I am so grateful you are listening to this episode. If you're new here, you should know that I believe that my purpose is to uplift, inspire, and educate others to communicate masterfully so that they can better understand themselves and the world around them. I've spent years in the personal development and transformational technology space, and I want to share with you the wisdom that was passed down to me from giants in the industry. So if you're on a journey of self-mastery, just like me, looking to make dreams a reality and willing to be a leader for your family and community, then join me in seizing the butt cheeks of life and giving them a big ol' squeeze. Let's jump into the show. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Carpe Natem Podcast. I'm so excited to have a very special guest here in the studio with me today. I have Evan Price, who is the founder and CEO of the Artist Collective. He is an artist coach working with many different people in all facets of the music industry. He works with people he calls artistpreneurs, or is it musicpreneurs? But he's going to be telling us a little bit about what he does and how he helps others achieve their dreams, and a little bit about what got him into the game. But Evan, welcome to this podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. This is great.
I'm very excited to have you on. I've been following you and following your content for quite some time, and I've seen it grow exponentially over the years. Tell me what kind of got you into this business, and tell me a little bit about Artist Collective.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I was a musician first. I'm not anymore. I kind of dabble, but I got started on the drums in like 4th or 5th grade, ended up getting into a band and kind of just became their unspoken manager as well. And realized after getting thrown into this just out of necessity that I just really liked the business side of things over the performing and touring and doing all of the musician stuff. So I left the band and went up here to Chicago to go to school and learned everything I could about the music business, got a bachelor's in music business management from Columbia College, and then decided to just not use that degree and work for myself and started my own company. Really dedicated to just helping these independent artists, just like I was in my band, figure out how to do this. How do you make money from these creative skills that we all have? How do we package it into an offer? How do we package it into a brand? So it's just something that I found I'm really passionate about and decided to roll with it and make it into a business.
And I'm really glad that there's people like you that exist, because I also have a background in music. I've been singing on stages since I was a very little kid. And then when I was older, I started screaming in bands, and we had some success. But what I noticed that I was really good at is marketing. So when Instagram was not owned by Meta, my band and my bandmate, it was just two of us, and we would basically promote ourselves so much and just be constantly putting out content on Instagram, and we grew a following where our music was being played by people all over the world. And it was interesting because other band members saw that stuff and basically looked at us and like, that's a sellout stuff. That's bullshit. All these things that you're doing is lame. And then now it's like the norm. Everyone's trying to go viral on TikTok. Everyone's trying to make a song that gets, hundreds of thousands of downloads. So I'm glad there's people who are in the business that are looking at it from a perspective of, okay, let artists do what artists do, and then let's make sure that we package them in a way that is able for them to kind of make a living off of, because there's always the concept of like the broke starving musician, right? That's if you want to really follow your dreams, you're going to end up seeing years of just like, negative bank accounts, pulling gas ends, working 3 jobs just to make tour. What really drew you to like the business side about it? What really caught your attention?
What caught my attention was just people with passion, people with creative skills. And, it's funny because, even on when I'm, being interviewed and stuff, I always consider myself in the music business. But recently, I feel like not so much. I'm more in the creative skill set business, if that makes sense, because I don't try to push artists into like making a business from like their recorded music, like we would typically think, even back when you were talking about pushing on Instagram, and people thought that was a sellout move because it was just like all about the music, right? Yes, the music is still there, but it's more of how can you build a business around stuff that you love to do? And that might just be playing music. So what we specialize in is really focusing on what else are you doing outside of course, writing and recording music and pushing it on DistroKid and trying to get streams for halves of pennies. We get that. But what else are you doing that you could put a dollar sign on? So I think to answer your question, what really like drove me to it is like, I found my own passion in something very unique, which is just helping artists figure out their business. And I want to find that same passion in other people. Like, what is it? Like, do you really love teaching kids how to play piano? Cool. Let's run with it. It's creative. It's a skill. Let's make a business out of it. So that's why we're really like focused on that term of artistpreneurs. You're an entrepreneur, but you're also still an artist. And I never want that to die either.
Right. And there's some sort of perfect unison when both are put in a play that actually puts someone into the trajectory of just being a local artist or being somebody that's actually known maybe, continentally or even internationally. For artists who are kind of starting, let's say somebody who's just kind of like recently joined a band, they have high inspirations, they have, maybe one or two songs wrote, what kind of advice would you give them on where to kind of go from there? Because anyone can just kind of like find some band members and make some music, but what do you do from that point?
I think taking a good hard look at who your potential target audience is, because when you first get started, let's just talk about finding fans of the music that you create, right? Every artist kind of comes to me and says, yeah, anybody with ears will like my music. It's like, no, let's get more specific. Mm-hmm. What other artists are they actually listening to? What other brands are they, spending time on? What other pages are they liking on Facebook and, following on TikTok? If you can get into the heads of, your true customer avatar, you're going to know how to approach them and how to communicate with them online. I mean, giant brands like McDonald's and Nike and Apple are all doing this. They're reverse engineering and say, let's slow down. Let's figure out who our customers actually are. Who are we actually targeting? Of course, everybody could buy an iPhone, but let's start from scratch first. So figuring out a simple exercise I always give is like the 5-5-5 rule. Name 5 artists that you think that you sound like. Have a stranger on the street listen to some of your songs and have them name 5 artists they think you sound like. And then ask a close friend or family member 5 artists as well. Take those 15 artists. You can build a larger list using tools online, using the power of, Facebook and Google, reverse engineering, and make a list from that 15, make a list of 75. Now you have some artists and some brands that fans that they like, fans of those brands and bands would probably also like you. Now you have more of a plan of attack than just trying to target everybody who listens to music. Right. If that makes sense.
It does, because I guess the concept here is that instead of having like 100 pennies, you want 4 solid quarters, where the people that are actually into you are likely to follow you, and you want to build that strong base with somebody, make the connection with people. And I noticed that, like, for example, the bands that are most relevant to me are the ones that I hold the dearest in my heart. They were ones that impacted me. I am their target demographic. I'm the one that was moved by them, and they could put out whatever and I'll still support them. In comparison to just kind of like the plethora of all the music that's out there. Maybe somebody drops maybe I know the artist, they drop some new music. I don't really care too much. But if, somebody like, I love the band Movements. If they drop something, I'm like immediately going and downloading it. If they have a concert coming by, it doesn't care who else is on the lineup. I'm going to go see them. So it's really, I guess, establishing a base of people who like your music and then finding out who to target to. I have something to kind of ask in regards to your 5-5-5. How do you prevent yourself from, I don't want to use the word copying, but I do notice that when those who start out, when they're still figuring out their sound and figuring out their voice, they tend to personify or act like or sound like bands that influence them, how do you stay away and kind of create your own unique sound that stands you apart?
Yeah, I mean, there's two pieces of that. There's the sound piece as well. I mean, let's just face it, nothing's original, right? Everything is like a malleable version of, I listen to two things and I put them together and I put my own spin on it. And now it's like kind of original, but it's not. So embracing the fact that you can't really make anything fully original. Everything is an inspiration of something else, and just kind of dealing with that. There's not really a formula for that per se, but just taking inspiration from multiple different kinds of genres, I think would help. And then there's the other side of it, which is just like personal branding, which you talked about even before, like Instagram is a big thing. Not a lot of people did that, or, before the Gary V's of the world talking about personal brands. There's that voice too, which it comes apart from the sound itself of your music, but like, what is your message? What are you trying to push that's even you're talking about on your pages that's off of your songs? Mm-hmm. So really figuring out like what you stand for, what's your mission? Like why are you making music? What kind of transformation are you trying to uplift people? Are you trying to, push, mental health awareness onto your fans and onto people? Like finding that voice, I think, will help as well. And that will help set you apart from a band that you might sound a little bit like, you know what I mean? So it's a mixture of those two things.
I love that because it resonates with me. When I was making music, the idea was like, I'm making music for me. If you happen to enjoy it too, then bomb. But I'm not trying to make something that sounds like something that you like. I'm trying to make music for me. All the pursuits that I did musically were to impress my 14-year-old self. And when my 14-year-old self was being emo and self-harming and listening to Bullet for My Valentine and As I Lay Dying, like I wanted to be that same person for somebody else. And maybe if you listen to my music, it gets you through your hard time. Maybe if by chance listening to me gets you to the next day, which is sometimes the hardest thing for some people, then I've done my job as an artist, as somebody to putting something out there. But it's so hard because just, with genres, I feel like you have to fit like a certain shoe type and you have to like sound a certain way. You have to be Phil Bozeman, or you got to be somebody, the guy that sounds, the guy from Chelsea Grin, or, you have to have the nastiest of the nastiest. You got to talk about like this specific genres. And I genuinely like the people who kind of deviate from that path and really sound like unique and talk about unique things, like whatever. You could tell somebody who kind of does something for the sake of, I guess, publicity or for the sake of money. And you could tell somebody who's actually trying to make like an impact with the community that they're building.
Yeah, I think, you said an interesting point about like you're making music for your 14-year-old self. When you start to think about like who your fans are, that is the perfect place to start, even before the 5-5-5 rule. Your super fans, not even just your general fans, are like, oh yeah, I listen to their music, it's okay. But your super fans are going to be almost carbon copies of you. Mm-hmm. Your interests, your beliefs, they're probably going to have similar life experiences. So if you start there, if you start from a place of like self-awareness and be like, cool, like I went through X, Y, and Z, so let's make a song about that and highlight that and attract people who also went through X, Y, or Z. That's a great place to start. Really embracing your super fans are basically other versions of you somewhere in the world.
True. Very, very true. Is there any specific artist, it could be music wise, or it could be movie, or it could be literature? Is there anyone specifically that calls out to you that that really inspired you to do what you do, or any lesson that you've learned from them that really kind of you highlight or take to heart more often than any other like artist, or anything that kind of like let me give you an example. Like I said, one of my favorite bands is Movements. So some of their music resonates with me because of the stuff that they've gone through, and to the point where some of their lyrics I want tattooed all over me because it hits me in places that no other place has hit me. And then for movies, it's certain movies like Coco, where it's that family love, it's that family thing where I look at and draw inspiration from that. But do you have any artists or any type of media that really kind of stuck with you and kind of like guides you in what you do?
Yeah, I'm really digging you bringing up all these metal bands, because believe it or not, that's the type of band I was in. That's what I was raised on. My first tattoo is "As I Lay Dying" quote right on my chest. Sick. Only through struggle have I found rest. I think rest? That is like one of the first ones that really stuck with me and like brought me into like philosophical questions, at 18, 19 that we all go through. Sure. My favorite band to this day is still Northlane as well. They're an Australian metalcore band.
Big fan.
And I remember their first couple albums were very like, wake up from the dream you're in, very philosophical, like let's look inward. And that's kind of the state that I was in that time. And I feel like I still always am. So self-awareness is a big part of my brand and a big part of one of my 5 core values just as a person. So I think I find myself being attracted to artists and pieces of media that speak to that as well.
I'd love to know more about your core values, because that's something that's been coming up in certain interviews where I've been meeting people who have read Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements, and where they have basically standards and practice and they have standards that they basically don't break for anyone. And core values you mentioned. Can you elaborate on what core values you hold?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, core values, it's one of the main steps within our program when we work with artists and artistpreneurs. It's one of the first things I have them get aware on. It's something that a lot of artists and just us as people don't even think about. And these are almost like what you're talking about in The Four Agreements, which is also one of my favorite books, is like, what are the values that are most officially at your core? What are something that like helps guide your decisions, even subconsciously, especially subconsciously? Mine are ambition, honesty, creativity, self-awareness. Those are the top 4 for me. And I try to find what those are for other people as well. 3 to 5, typically, like figure out what those are. What are your guiding lights? And then again, how do you showcase that online in a way that's attracting other people who are like, wow, I also have family as one of my top values. So cool. Create some pieces of content that speak to that. You can say it directly or indirectly, just put it out there so you're attracting people who are, just like I said before, are almost carbon copies of you and value the same things. Those are going to be your super fans, where it doesn't matter if you release a new song or a new t-shirt, they're going to buy it because you've connected with them on a deeper level than just like a thing that you put out.
Absolutely. How would you guide someone to find their core values? Because it's such an abstract kind of thought, and not a lot of people are exposed to. It sounds like you and I have been exposed to kind of similar resources, especially in like the entrepreneurial space. What might come easy to us is such an abstract thought for others. How would someone kind of develop and find what a core value for them would be?
Yeah, great question. So I asked them 3 questions. This is the activity to kind of unearth these core values. Think about the times in your life where you were the happiest. So I have them journal. Who were you with? What were you doing? Just brain dump. Don't overthink it. Don't try to like create something that didn't exist. It could be as simple as I was on family vacation at the Grand Canyon. Or I remember a birthday party with my cousin Judy, who, isn't with us anymore. That was happy to me, whatever. List all the happiness. Then list what is the most fulfilling times in your life. Fulfilling, satisfying, just in general at a deep level. And then the third one is the proudest. Where were you the most proud? Was it graduating college? Was it starting your business for the first time? Was it going into the studio? Figuring that out, having a nice brain dump of things in a journal. And then what I have like a list of hundreds of core value type of words that I have them skim through and say, cool, you just journaled a bunch of stuff. Fresh from that exercise, mark a couple of ones that stick out to you. If you'll find it's like a hard thing to describe, but when you read the word and you're reflecting on what you just wrote, things will just pop out. Oh, cool. Family came up because I wrote a bunch of instances where I was with my family. So that probably aligns with it. Eventually you just narrow it down to 3, 4, 5. Those are your cores. So it's as simple as that. Just really reflecting on like, where are you the most aligned finding where that passion is. Is it because, are most of your stories where you're behind a piano? Okay, there's probably something there. Are most of the stories around you being creative in some sort? Is it you in the classroom? Is it around family? Aligning with that is going to help you live your purpose and not think that you're just living for somebody else's life, right? Not like, as Don, as the Four Agreements would say, is just like, you're not catering to other people. You are not faltering from your beliefs. So first you got to figure out what your beliefs are. And I think core values is a great place to start.
Yeah, it sounds like for you, it's really bringing artists to a point of clarity where they're able to actually identify what they stand for and what they really want in it. Because the idea of like, oh, I just want to be a famous rock star. Well, what does that mean to you? What's your level? What do you define as success? What do you define as comfortable? What are you willing to do to get to that point? And then there are people who get to a point where maybe they're touring and they hate touring and they're like, this is terrible. I never want to do this again, but they still want to be, involved in music and do something else. I guess a question that I drive from this is like, in a state of adversity, or when you're facing something or something that's kind of like tumultuous, if you have like an artist or somebody that you're representing that's kind of in a place where they're facing either like a potential band breakup, a controversy, or just something that's kind of like against them. Do you have any advice for those who are going through more tumultuous times?
It makes it a lot easier when when you have that clarity on like what you really want, what your values are, and even past that, like what your goals are. So ask my advice would be, of course, it's easier said than done, but before you find yourself in those situations, find that clarity, seek that clarity, hire that coach, take that course, read that book, figure out like why you're really doing this. Because what I tend to find is a lot of times artists are trying to be artists for the wrong reasons.
Very true.
They're out because, they didn't have any friends growing up and they're pursuing this for validation. And I get it. There's no judgment. But you need to get clear on that first, because when things get hard and you're out here for validation and you're not getting that validation, are you going to stick with it? Probably not.
Right.
So getting clear on like what you really are after and finding that clarity and looking inward instead of outward at more fans and more streams and more record labels, like you got to get aligned with your purpose first. So that's absolutely the first step I take with artists that work with me. And I feel like it's something that the industry is kind of lacking. Well, out here, everybody's just trying to get on Spotify playlist. Nobody's really asking, but why am I doing this? Right. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I wish I would have had somebody like you in my corner when I first started doing music, many, many years ago, because as time grew on, as popularity got better, as more people started like listening to us, we were getting put on bigger shows, we were just playing bigger venues. Ego got the best of me, and I was doing things that were problematic. And I now, as a 28-year-old, I'm able to look back at it and be like, oh, I was doing things that were not aligned with my values. I was doing things that were very self-indulgent and very ego-pleasing, when the point of the music in the beginning was to make music that would help someone kind of get through whatever they're going through, the same way the music that I listen to helped me get through those times. And it's almost like a way of like, you lose your way. And you said before you even get to that point, you should ask yourself, like, why are you doing this? And I guess that's where I made the mistake of like, I fell off my path because I was so blinded by the popularity, the success, the notoriety, the ability to walk into a place and everybody knows who you are. It gets very easy to let the ego kind of take over, and then bad habits and bad situations end up happening.
Yeah. I mean, the ego is a big piece, and I think it's a weird place to be, because that kind of is part of art. Is like your expression is kind of your ego doing that, but you also don't want it to kind of take over. So it's a weird medium of like, I'm over here being like, kill the ego, but also it's like, you kind of need it to create the art in a certain point. So it's just about that balance, like anything. And a big thing also of what we do, apart from like that clarity and that inner work, is just simple goal setting, right? Cool. You know why you're doing what you're doing, but like next step is, what do you want to happen? Like, more fans isn't a goal. So it's like, is your goal to tour the world? Great. Draw a line in the sand, create those process goals below that. What is it going to take to tour? Cool. Let's get a band first. Let's rehearse. Like all those little steps that artists like to just negate and just skip to the end. And they end up just being on this hamster wheel of like, oh, I'm just here. My goal is to get more fans. You're never going to stop. That's a never ending goal. So
right.
Helping artists and artistpreneurs figure out what those SMART goals are. I don't know if you are familiar with that acronym.
SMART goals?
Yeah. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. That's every goal you should meet those 5 criteria. So more fans isn't specific. 1,000, I want to get 1,000 fans on my TikTok by next year is a SMART goal, for instance. So developing these within your business is absolutely crucial. Otherwise, you're never going to reach any goal, because more fans isn't anything. So I could get 1 more fan and be successful. I could get 1 million more fans and not be successful. So you've got to define that. So figuring that out first after you have aligned with what your purpose is. Like, cool, I'm a singer. That's my purpose. I'm trying to spread positive messages through singing. Great. That's a passion I can get behind. So what's the next step? What do you want to accomplish? Figuring those goals out, you've got to do.
I'd love to know some of your SMART goals for the Artist Collective, and as an artist coach as well. Do you have any? Where do you see yourself in the next year, 5, 10?
Yeah. So we currently have a program called the Artistpreneur Accelerator. And the Artistpreneur Accelerator is here to do just that. Accelerate artistpreneurs' just endeavors. You've got a business that you want to pursue. You've got this creative skill set that you have, but you're not sure how to put a dollar sign on it and find your customers and your clients. So we've been on a mission to try to get 6 of these artistpreneurs every single month and just keep growing year after year. And we built this about a year ago. Yeah. To the top of 2021 is when we started it. And we've been growing pretty rapidly ever since. So my main goal is just, I want to help, 1,000 new artists build their businesses. A lot of them from scratch. Like a lot of them are just like, they woke up and said, hey, I've realized, I've identified I'm really good at this one thing. I don't know how that makes it a business. So almost just emulating what I had done. I was a manager in my band. I did promotion. I did booking. I had this management and organization skill that I eventually turned into a tangible, profitable business. So I want to help others do that as well. So, long term, yeah, I see us just being, force to be reckoned with when it comes to the music industry. I want to bring mindfulness back into music. I want it to be more than just about numbers and selling records. I want to help people make impacts.
I love that. I genuinely love that mindset. And I love that you are bringing that to your artists, because in a way you are influencing and creating a tribe of people who then share the same message and will do the same thing, hopefully in their communities as well. So it's like you help 1 or 2 people, they help 2 or 3 people, and then it becomes exponential. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things that I'm not sure if you've ever hired a coach or like been through a coaching program or something, but it's like, we're all stealing like artists, just like we talked about with the music genres. It's like, you learn one trait from us, and then I encourage our artists, cool, that core values training, I want you to steal that and teach your clients or whatever it is. Maybe you have a drum lesson. Cool. Maybe you can integrate that into there. And I think that's something that is a lot of times frowned upon, especially in the entertainment industry. IP is a big thing. Everybody's like, oh, this is mine, don't take it. It's like, man, we're out here sharing stuff all the time with the internet. So take it, steal it, use it. If you can make an impact with it, I want you to.
To segue, Do you feel that in the current situation, in regards to like social media and the current climate that we have, where everything's kind of geared towards going viral, or kind of there's a lot of pressure from entrepreneurs or these kind of like social influencers to constantly be creating content, where it almost sounds like, I know artists who take a while to develop something, and when they finally drop it, it's really like a work of art because they've put so much time and resource into it. Meanwhile, there's people who are basically putting out content on such a regular basis, and they end up seeing more success just because they're kind of like constantly putting something in front of people, even though the content may not be good. And who am I to judge what's good or not? But from what I've seen is I'm noticing that there's a trend of people who kind of like, the more that they put out, regardless if it's good or not, kind of gets more attention than those who put a lot of effort into something and kind of drop something that they're proud of, and they can be like, this is a direct representation of me.
Yeah, I think there's examples where both of those can be really successful. You know, everybody kind of wants to go the like Frank Ocean or Tyler the Creator route, where they take a lot of pride into like a project and dropping it. Yeah, but you don't exactly have the same means as Frank Ocean and Tyler the Creator. So like planning your strategies around what you actually have and what like your means really are, I think is important. And most people can just do the consistency thing, the not chasing necessarily virality, but what I tell my clients is it's all about putting in those reps. As you know, in the tech world and the marketing world, it's all about testing. If you just put all of your work and thought process into like one idea, and you just put it out there and it doesn't work, like, and you just stop there, you know, that's where it ends. Instead, cool, let's try different strategies. Let's try different texts. Let's roll it out in a different way. It's all about testing. That's all marketing is. And that's why a lot of those people who are posting 5 times a day, that's why they're winning, because 80% of their stuff isn't working, but the 20% of the stuff that is, they wouldn't have even got there without the other 80. So
right.
I'm always a proponent of that, but I get that can be draining. A lot of people see that as like demeaning to the art itself, but who's, like what you said, who's to say what's good or what's art and not art? Anything is art nowadays. So yeah. I'm always saying, put in more reps. The consistency is going to win over the being too cautious and overthinking.
How would somebody, and I'm thinking this from a perspective of like a band. So when we came up with songs, we'd create something, we'd obviously demo it, then we'd have to go in the studio. And by the time it got mixed and mastered and complete, it's this super long process, and it takes all this time. Some people have more resources than others. Some people have, friends with studios, and they create all their music in their friend's garage, and they're able to like rep out stuff more often. But for somebody who doesn't really have those means, what can they be doing in order to put in those reps if they're still in the process of like creating their music, kind of creating new material? We don't have the mix and master copies, but we're in the process of writing. What kind of content do we put out there?
Yeah. I mean, TikTok's a great place to try that out. Before you spend $5,000 to go into the studio that you probably don't need to spend that much, instead of doing that, maybe just, demoing it on TikTok and seeing what happens, asking for reviews, asking for, should I drop this type of thing? Like use these free platforms that we didn't have 5-10 years ago to see what works. One's probably going to like get more traction, and then that's the song that you go and record. But I think there's plenty that we can do to test before we even go into the studio or, drain a bunch of money into recording an entire EP or things like that. But I mean, these home studios nowadays are crazy. Like the simple setup I have right here, I could record an entire album and it would sound pretty damn good. You know what I mean? So
right.
Use what you got is really what that comes down to. And what you got is TikTok and Instagram, Facebook. You can sign up for those for free. You can test some things. You can find your audience. You can get feedback in real time. And then you know what to actually sink your money into. So use the free stuff.
Right. Instead of trying to guess what is the best course of action. You can actually test in real time and get that instant feedback from a plethora of people that would have never heard you otherwise.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's all about testing. I mean, let me tell you this. This is what labels are doing too. They don't know what's going to work. They do not know what's going to work. They're going to TikTok and saying, I want to see what's working. Oh, cool. We want that person. Like that's all they're doing too. They just happen to have a bigger budget than you, but it doesn't negate what these independent artists are doing on these platforms. Like just be authentic, show up consistently, try different things. That's the biggest thing. I think some artists are consistent, but they're consistently the same. Mm-hmm. Switch some things. It's not really a test if you're posting the exact same type of video 5 times a day. That's not testing anything. You're just being consistent. You're not testing. Right. So, try different styles, try different angles, try different lighting, try a different microphone, whatever it is. Like, just go out there and test and see what works and get real feedback and be open to change.
Love it. I have a question in regards to finding management and finding somebody to kind of get you to the next level, because in my experience, have had trouble with finding managers who basically just took our money and kind of ran with it. We had people who just kind of used us for, the attention that we had at the moment or the draw that we had, but they had no intention of actually helping us. If I am an artist and I'm looking for somebody to kind of go into a space with, either a mentorship or even like a deal where you actually agree to be on somebody's label or somebody's management team, what is something to look out for in order to prevent, I guess, getting fucked over? I don't know what the nicer way of saying that is, but what's something that we can look out for? Because sometimes we don't really notice the red flags until you're 3, 4, 5 months in, and you're like, we're not getting anything on return we're not getting a return on this investment, and we're also being in a way taken advantage of, and we're in a year-long contract, and it happens more commonly than one would think.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, a lot of people don't realize they're getting screwed over until they are, because they don't actually know what they want. Mm-hmm. So coming to these managers or consultants or programs with like, what are you realistically wanting to accomplish with this person? And have that conversation with them. On top of that, just your typical stuff, like look for testimonials. Hit up other artists. Treat this no different than you're buying shoes on Amazon. You're going to look at the reviews. You're going to see what other people have to say. You're going to see if those people's experience matches the experience you wish to have. It all depends on, of course, the person itself, but things like that you can use to help decide if this is the right path for you. But really just slowing down and saying, what do I want to accomplish? What are my outcome goals? What's the one thing I want to do? I want this manager to help open doors for, a record deal, or I want to get specifically on TV shows and have that conversation. What steps can we take, Mr. or Mrs. Manager, that we can take together to make these outcome goals happen and see if it's right for you? But a lot of times artists just go into it with these big dreams, these big, not smart dreams, which is just like, I want to get to the next level. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What exactly does that mean? What's the next level? What level are you at? Where you want to get to? So just comes back to goal setting, I think. But ultimately, that is a tough one, because it all kind of comes down to the person like that you're trying to make the deal with. And a lot of times it's just being good at reading people, and like reading their authenticity is important as well. I'm also big on personal brand. I see a lot of these marketing companies are like, I'm going to get you to the next level. And then you look at their pages and you're just like, but you haven't even gotten yourself to the level that I'm talking about, or even close to.
Right.
So I think that's important too. Yeah, nothing. So I think aligning that, again, numbers aren't everything, especially when it comes to that. But if you're having this marketing company that's going to promise you millions of streams and they don't even have an Instagram page, it's kind of a red flag.
Sure. Yeah. That's something that always caught my attention, where it's like, okay, you're promising these things, but you yourself don't have it. So how would I expect you to do that for me if you can't even do it for yourself? This has been a wonderful conversation. Your insight has been absolutely amazing, and I'm so grateful that you took this conversation and this time to speak with me. I'd like to end on this note. Is there a message that you believe more people should hear? And I guess, is there something you'd like to tell those who are in the space of pursuing something that they love? What would be either some advice or a saying or something that a message basically you wish more people would hear?
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many, but I want to chalk it up to this one 3-word phrase that we use with all of our clients, which I know all of you artists and creatives out there, and probably just all human beings that are listening can relate to, which is do less better. A lot of you are doing a lot of things. You have all these hats. You're trying to be manager and consultant and drummer and producer. Oh, I have all these different talents I could pursue. So you're pursuing all of them a little bit. If you just put down 80% of those things and you focused all of your time, energy, and resources into, let's say, one skill set that lights you on fire the most, you're going to see incredible results. You're basically just taking your energy and putting a little bit of it into these things. That's why the needle hasn't been moved. So do less better. That's what we try to pride ourselves on helping artists do. Putting down all of those hats and saying, cool, you said that you're really, really jazzed about helping people write songs. Then let's just do that. Stop being a chef for a second. Stop doing these other things that you probably still like as well, but hyper focus into one and you'll see amazing growth.
Sure. The jack of all trades, but master of none.
Exactly. And
so
it's really putting down those, and it's hard to wrangle that in with creatives because I get it. A lot of it is self-doubt and oh, but if I go all in, then it's more disappointment if it doesn't work, as opposed to if I've got all these feelers out, something will take off is what I hear a lot. Well, I'll just wait for something to take off. No, you have the power to make something take off, but you're not doing it because you're too scattered. You're too overwhelmed.
And it's that laser focus that really, it's the concept of the water, where by itself, if it's not focused, it could, go over stones. But if you laser focus water, it can cut through diamond.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's awesome, man. That's a really good place to end this. I'd love for the people listening to be able to support you. Where can people find you and know more about the projects that you are currently involved in?
For sure. You can check us out on artistcollect.com. I'm mainly over on Instagram as well. It's at AC_Evan. Shoot me a DM. Let's have a conversation. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing, what you're passionate about, and how, it makes sense if we can work together.
Evan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights. And I'm so glad that we got this time to chat. It's been eye-opening. It's been phenomenal. And I'm really grateful that you took a time to do an episode with me today.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Carpe Natem Podcast. If you love this episode, please consider leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Music or iTunes. It takes 30 seconds for you, but for us, it helps spread positivity to more people during these chaotic times. It helps build a community, and it makes me smile from ear to ear. Speaking of community, we have a Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Carpe Natem. Just answer the 3 questions to get access to some extra motivation and inspiration for your timeline. If you would like to support this podcast, screenshot this episode and share this to your story. Tag me at Carpe Natem 114. That's going to be my handle across all platforms, including TikTok, if you'd like to give me a follow. If you haven't already, please rate us and subscribe on Spotify or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. And lastly, you can find all episodes linked to resources and opportunities for coaching and mentoring from me at carpenatem114.com. I cannot thank you enough for spending part of your day with me. You are all rock stars taking the necessary steps to be your best self, willing to do whatever it takes, and ready to grab life by the butt cheeks. So until next time, this is Nate Hoya-Reynoso signing off.